First-person games and horror go hand in hand, like, Peanut Butter and Jelly, Mountain Dew and Doritos, or Sammy and Ronnie from Jersey Shore. Some of the most horrific and frightening gaming moments I've ever had have largely come from that genre. So being that it's Halloween and all that, I thought it might be worth taking a look at some of the more scary moments in FPS games over the years. Now, please, before you get your panties in a twist, these are just some of my favourite moments. I'm not proclaiming this list as definitive or anything like that. On that note, feel free to discuss your own in the comments section below, but do it without, being a dick. Anyway, moving right on. People who've played Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines will no doubt speak of it pretty highly, and whilst it isn't an outright horror game, it does have some superbly written sequences. One of these occurs early in the game when the player is doing some menial tasks like sorting out drug dealers and sabotaging an art exhibit. Then suddenly things take a weird turn as the player finds themselves in the haunted Ocean House Hotel, plagued by the spirit of an axe murderer. The Ocean House Hotel is a favourite among Bloodline fans, and for good reason. It's damn scary and brilliantly designed, full of fantastic little scripted sequences and lots of spooky imagery, and will have most players heading for the exit with their tail firmly between their legs. The Thief series has always had a really creepy and spooky atmosphere, largely due in part to the sound design, but also to the general content and theme of each game.
You think you can snare me, trap me with your secrets? I am secret.
One of the best examples of this is in the third game, Deadly Shadows, during one of the game's more memorable missions inside the abandoned orphanage named the Shellbridge Cradle. Now, this whole level is pure nightmare fuel, but one of the most frightening moments occurs early on in the mission. As the player is first exploring the area and getting familiar with the layout, they'll inevitably find themselves walking up a spiraling staircase to the building's attic. At this point, a loud thumping begins, sounding like something desperately trying to get free from within. Now, the first time I heard this, I think my heart pretty much exploded out of my chest in fright, and it's still one of the most chilling moments in the entire series. Stalker is one of the most polarizing games I've ever played. At certain times, it crafts an immersive and believable game world, and then yet at other times, it's a bug-ridden mess. One thing that most people couldn't argue with is that Stalker had some very unsettling and spooky environments, primarily some of the underground areas. Early on in the first game, when you're moving through the sewers to escape a military raid, you encounter a mysterious cloaked mutant that chews on rifle rounds like toffee, and it doesn't get any better from there. It's not until you're about to finally leave the sewers when things become truly horrifying as you encounter the new enemy called the Controller. 99% of players would have been left completely dumbfounded the first time this happened, and they were probably staring at the game over screen before they even knew what hit them. Doom 3 is kind of like the little engine that could, and by that I mean it's a game that never stops trying to scare the crap out of the player, even if this does just evolve into monster closets and spawning in enemies when you even think of picking up a health or ammo pack. Most of the so-called scares in the game often occur during the aforementioned item pickups, but there is one great jump scare very early on in the campaign that is just brilliant. After the Hell Portal has been opened, Doomguy is making his way back to Mars City to regroup with the Marines. Now, inquisitive players will no doubt be exploring every nook and cranny along the way, eventually heading into the men's bathroom when this happens. I'm looking for Ray Finkel and a clean pair of shorts. Most people would know Frictional Games from their work on the Amnesia series, but one of their earlier games, Penumbra, is arguably their scariest work. In Penumbra, you're just some average guy investigating a mysterious research facility that got shut off from the rest of the world when the inhabitants made some discoveries they probably shouldn't have. Now the place is full of nasties like zombie wolves, flesh-eating spiders, and a giant, and I do mean giant, worm that chases the player around at random points in the game. The first time you encounter this thing, it smashes through a wooden door in front of you, probably instantly killing the vast majority of first-time players. Later on in the game, you're also required to run away from it, shutting doors behind you to slow it down. And it still scares the shit out of me even to this day. Call of Cthulhu Dark Corners of the Earth was an interesting horror game in that it was a lot less about jump scares and more about putting the player into lots of cat and mouse situations. During gameplay, the perspective would frequently change to an unseen predator hot on the player's tail, and the campaign also featured lots of brilliant timed chase sequences. One of these in particular is a scene where the protagonist Jack Walters finds himself attacked in his hotel room as the hostile inhabitants of the mysterious town of Innsmouth break in with axes and shotguns. What ensues is a sequence where you're required to bolt doors and make barricades out of bookshelves to slow down your pursuers as you desperately try to escape. Even now, this is still a tense and nail-biting sequence that always comes down to the wire. On the subject of chase sequences, let's talk about Condemned 2 Bloodshot. Jumping into the boots of edgy, alcoholic former FBI agent Ethan Thomas, you move through a poorly lit urban environment, engaging in fisticuffs with vagrants, able to withstand multiple pipes and wrenches to the face. Now, a little bit over halfway through this largely horrible campaign, you end up in the Black Lake Lodge, in the middle of a forest, where it soon becomes apparent the entire place has been decimated by a rabid grizzly bear. After the bear shows itself, literally popping out of nowhere, what then ensues is a 5 or so minute nail-biting chase scene as you squeeze through drywall and broken furniture to escape your furry follower before it can eat you alive. And how does it all end? Well, you just blow the goddamn thing to pieces with a shotgun and a propane tank. Condemned 2 was a terrible game, but this short sequence is a masterpiece, floating brightly in a sea of excrement. Moving back to the Thief franchise, to the first game in the series, we've got the Haunted Cathedral at number 3. Once a training ground for Hammerites, it's now something much worse, holding a magical ice sought after by the game's protagonist Garrett, but also home to all manner of zombies, ghosts, and the notorious Hammer Haunts. I can still remember watching my dad play this level when I was just a kid, and when I finally mustered the courage up to try it myself, it didn't disappoint. Even when you discover that those pesky Hammer Haunts can be killed with the sword, it still doesn't make it any less terrifying. And the moment you finally get out of there gives you such a sense of relief.
Now that you have attained your prize, can you escape with your skin?
Of course, you can't talk about Condemned 2 without talking about the first game. Condemned Criminal Origins was another great horror game, much like Call of Cthulhu, that relied less on jump scares and more on getting under your skin and just kind of staying there.
There's one coming your way. Addict amped up on something.
Now, marvel as I contradict myself when I say that truly one of the game's most memorable moments is a jump scare about 2/3 into the game. Again, playing as Ethan Thomas, you find yourself investigating an abandoned high school in search of a man named Tibbets, who has been hunted down by the mysterious serial killer X. Ethan, of course, shows up too late to find Tibbets dead in a locker, or so it seems, leading to one of the few jump scares in the game and arguably one of the best. What makes this scene so amazing is that even though you know it's coming, it still scares the crap out of you when you realize how much he's been tortured. I mean, he's had his lips cut off and a few other pieces removed from his body.
Help me.
It reminds me of that scene from Seven where that guy's been hooked up to a life support machine and kept alive for like 20 years. And yeah, this scene in Condemned is equally fucked up. Now, I spent a lot of time thinking about the scariest moment in an FPS game, and after much deliberation, I came to the conclusion that I think most players would agree with, and that is the Shodan reveal in System Shock 2.
The Polito form is dead, insect.
Coming literally out of nowhere, after a good 3 or 4 hours, guided supposedly by a scientist named Polito, you find everything was a ruse, as all of your movements have been orchestrated by the evil artificial intelligence, Shodan. The room goes dark and the very walls begin to disappear as Shodan's face appears around you, and her horrific, nightmarish voice utters those famous words.
I am Shodan.
Even talking about it right now is giving me goosebumps, and it still doesn't fail to make my hair stand on end just thinking about it. And that's it for my list of the scariest FPS moments of all time. I did spend a lot of time thinking about what to put on this list, and I know there's going to be some people pissed off that I didn't put in games like Half-Life 2 or Fear. But at the end of the day, these videos aren't gospel. They're just someone else's opinion. So feel free to drop a comment below about what moment in an FPS game scared you the most. And again, if you'd like to see more of these videos, drop a suggestion down there as well.